Cool. Okay, so we have started this week a data cataloging hackathon, and we have made all of the backend. Now we just need people to come and help us add sources. We have a guide about how to join with FAQ for all of the questions that may come up that you can go to, that we have provided the link to. And one question that comes up a lot is, why are we doing data cataloging? And how is data cataloging different from building a data set? If you've been following the work of the data governance group that's in collaboration with data sourcing, you can see that we have a very specific idea for how we're managing data. And that involves multiple stakeholders. So we have the data hosts that are going to have centralized, like the mission of centralizing data in collaboration with data providers. And we're working on asking permission for use of data, having controls for which data gets used according to licenses, present of private information, etc. And that's not information that we typically have about sources of language data in a way that can be used. So what we're doing right now is finding as many good sources of language data as we can, and adding that information about who owns the data, who has rights on the data, what kind of private information we can expect to find, and whose language data it represents. Good. So in order to support all of that, we have made this nifty little app, which has 3 modes. First, you can use it. Let me collapse fields here so that we have a nice visualization. So first, you can use it to visualize the data that we have right now. And it's going to give you a map of where things are located. You can filter to only look at, for example, sources, like only primary sources and language data sets rather than organizations. You can look only for, say, French resources. So here we have 2 entries so far that are both located in France. And you can look either where the organizations or the sources are located, or where the language speakers are located, which can be a little different depending on the sources. Cool. So that if you want to see what we have in here, you can also look more specifically at the sources that we have right now. So here we have 2 newspapers, Mediapart and Le Monde. And yeah, that's always still something to check before you add a new source, check that this isn't already there. Right, so that's to see what we have. What we need to be doing during the data catalog is adding new entries. And for adding new entries, we said that we have 3 types of resources in this data catalog. One is going to be primary sources. So those are locations that have language data or sources of language data that could be, for example, a radio station that has all of its shows, or a podcast station that has all of its podcasts, a library that has books that we could use. So those are the primary sources we're going to try and work with. We have processed language datasets, which are the items that we're used to working with in NLP. So something like, some of you might be used to working with the CNN Daily Mail processed datasets. That is very things where one item is 1 article and 1 summary. So those are usually from so those are usually coming from primary sources and have been processed in specific ways that we want to index now. And finally, we're looking to index language organizations and language advocates. And those are organizations that you can work with to further build up a catalog, or that have themselves access to primary sources or processed datasets. Cool. So now we're going to go through adding 3 of these sources. And we'll start with the primary source. So some primary sources we could have are, for example, if you're familiar, like Project Gutenberg would be a good primary source, since they have lots and lots of books that we can use in several languages, actually. So that's differently from the PG19 process data set. This is really like the source data that has a lot more books. Or another thing that we could use is like a specific website. And here I'm going to a website called Remezcla. That's a website based in the US. And we'll see soon why that might be an interesting source of data. Okay, so how we go? First, provide a descriptive name for the resource. That's going to be remezcla.com. Don't forget to validate. This is going to propose an ID for the source, provide a link to the homepage of the resource. So that one's easy. Copy, paste. Provide a short description of the resource. So here, there's two ways we can go about it. One is, just go to Wikipedia and look for the description there. So Remezcla is an American media company focused on the Latin American cultural sphere. It serves the millennial market. So as far as representing the cultural diversity of the US, that's maybe like something that we might want to have. Or obviously, you can want to add something more, and usually websites are going to have an About section. Go to the bottom here, About Us. That's how they describe themselves, and that can also be useful. Cool. So we're grabbing all of that as a description, and then we'll be able to search through those fields. So we've validated all of that. We have the description. Whose language is represented in the entry? So that's interesting on two levels. First, the language themselves. So unless I'm mistaken, all of the text on the website is actually in English. I don't think they have any Spanish content, but I'd have to double check or validate. I'm going to go with English for now. And please add any additional comments about the language varieties. So I could add a note right now, but I think everything's covered in the description already. There's that. The other thing is that for the language spoken, we want to know where the people who speak the language are, because that can give us information either for the information about the language varieties or whose language is represented. So first, you can choose if you want like full regions that are going to be like for ease of use, or here, it's really a US website. So most of the writers are in the United States. Again, like I'm doing my best effort right now. There will be a validation step where people can go back and check whether I missed something. Okay, so that's the language parts. I'm going in detail for the primary source. Will like go much faster. Information about the data owner of custodian. So we want to know who has the data and who we would be reaching out for. So first, there's an option to check if there's an organization that's already in the catalog that owns the data or that manages it. That's not the case here. So then we can enter the name of a new organization. And I think this is remezcla.com Incorporated or something like that. That's in the About Us. Yes, the company is Remezcla, headquartered in Williamsburg. So please enter the name of the person or identity, Remezcla. Entity type, this is, here I think the commercial entity is what fits best. Where is the entity? It's based in the United States. The name of a contact person for the entity. So again, we go to the website. They have a contact page. So we are not looking for advertising. We're not looking for editorial inquiries or jobs internships. We're just going to go with their main address here. So info@remezcla.com. Would you be willing to reach out to the entity to ask them about collaborating or using their data? So that one is for convenience, so we know who to ask to follow up. I'm going to mark myself. And where can we find more information about the organization or data custodian? I'm going to add a link to their Wikipedia page, because that can be useful information. OK, so we've done 2 of the sections. Then we're going to give more of the information that we're going to need in order to build that organization. Is the data available for download? So in this case, not really. It can be crawled, but there's no pre-process. So we're going to say, no, we would need to spontaneously reach out to the current owners or custodians. And here, the information is pre-populated with what we put for the contact address for the owners. As far as the licenses and terms of services, does the language data in the resource come with explicit licenses or terms of use? And what we do for that is that we go to the website. And usually, you'll find like a terms of use, conditions of use, something, terms and conditions. There we go. So yes, it does have explicit terms of use. So yes, which of the following best characterize it? It's not public domain. It is copyrighted. So we're going to mark copyright here. And it doesn't have any licenses such as CC or anything else in this category, so it's going to be other. For the explicit terms of use or license text, we're going to, so we don't want to necessarily copy paste all of this. So I think what we're going to do here is start with the URL, and then hopefully we can post-process that to download the actual text of the terms and conditions. If you have a short text of terms and conditions, you can just like copy paste it as it is. Okay, so we're nearly done with the availability. Finally, we said that we wanted to index personal information. And the question is, does the language data in the resource contain personally identifiable or sensitive information? And that's where you need to have a sense of what's in the data source. And this is articles about so culture, general terms, about music. You have like articles about movies. Okay, so let's think about that for a minute. Does the language data in the resource contain personally identifiable or sensitive information? That's very likely. At least the names will be there, and those are something that we need to protect. There's probably going to be some emails or some phone number somewhere, and there's probably going to be some individuals mentioned that might not quite be public figures. So how likely is the data to contain instances of generic PII such as names or addresses? I say very likely. And I'm going to point to names, very likely, email addresses, very likely. Website account names or handles, there's probably pseudonyms in there. And full face photographs and comparable images, I think that's also dates and birth if there's like any biographical information. How likely is the data to concern instances of numeric PII such as phone or social security numbers? I think that's probably less likely. So it's going to be somewhat likely. Definitely phone numbers are going to show up there. Everything else is probably less likely. We're going to put things that we have high confidence for. We're still going to try to look for them when we process the data. How likely is the data to contain instances of sensitive PII, such as health status or political beliefs? There's going to be op-eds in there. So it's very likely to have at least racial or ethnic origin, most definitely, political opinions, most definitely, religious or philosophical beliefs, and data concerning a person's sex, life, or sexual orientation. Okay, cool. So we've covered the personal identifying information. We only have a couple more sessions to go to. This is the most extensive form, and also I'm talking about it as I'm going, so it's taking a bit longer. So what kind of source primary services? So this is a website. What kind of website? So I think news or magazine website is probably a good idea here. What are the media types? So this is mostly text data, and most of them to come in HTML formats. Was the text transcribed from another media format? Not in that case. And is the data presented as a database or compressed archive? Not as such. There isn't something we can download that has everything. Cool. And then the second part is for us to know how much language data we can expect to find. So in this case, a single instance of language data here would be an article. I don't know how many articles there are exactly, but I'm guessing at least 100, probably at least 1,000 though, because it's been running for a while. So I'm going to say 1,000 to 10,000. And it's probably about 1,000 words per article on there. Cool. Okay. So we've done all of the work for an entry, talking about it, so it took a while. Now we want to save the entry to the catalog. So I click this button. It tells you forgot to enter a name. And we have a privacy policy that you can look at here that tells you why we are looking for names and what we're going to do with them. But basically, it's one, to track contribution, and two, to know who to follow up with. So I'm going to go back left. I am pressing Jernite. I am using here my professional email, which is in the public record, so I'm okay with that. And there we go. And now I try to save the entry to the catalog again. Oh, yeah, I pressed the button once, but this tells me that this works. Unable to save because there's already remescla.com. Okay, cool. So that was the primary source. If we want to look at the process data sets, the work is going to be mostly the same, with a few differences. So for a process data sets, let's move to a process data set now. So here we're looking at, for example, the Brazilian Portuguese web as corpus datasets. So here we have a paper that describes these datasets that was first created by these authors here. And this is a crawl dataset of Portuguese web text that is identified as relevant as Brazilian Portuguese. Cool. So same idea. I'm going to go a lot faster because we've seen most of what's going on here. So this is the, actually, I'm just going to copy paste here. Make my life easier. There's a web page for the datasets. The description, I'm going to just take the abstracts from the websites, from the paper. Cool. Entry languages and locations. So this has Portuguese. I'm going to add that this is supposed to be Brazilian Portuguese as an additional note. And this is going to be content created in Brazil. Cool. So entry representative, owner, or custodian. So this is currently, so same, we don't have the custodian so far, but this is currently managed by a university, which is the Neurocognition and Natural Language Processing Research Lab at, which university is that? Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. Cool, so we're going to copy that. We're going to add the owner here. So this is a university or research institution, which is located in Brazil. Please enter the name of a contact person for the entity. We're going to take here the first author. We'll probably want to follow up with about using the datasets. And with the email from the paper. Okay. Copy pasting from a PDF, it's fine. And where can we find more information? Let's see, we had the websites. Yeah. At the presentation. Cool. Okay, so this is going a lot faster now that we know that's what everything is about. Can the data be downloaded? And if we go to the page, we see that you can request access here with the Google form. This is one of the options. Yes, after signing a user agreement. The URL for the user agreement is going to be here. Data licenses in terms of services. Does the language data in the resource come with explicit licenses? Yes. So I had a look previously. This says not public domain. It had an open license for research use only. I could not find whether this was CC license or anything else. And for the terms of condition, now openly available both for download and for navigation. Yeah, I don't think there was any further information about the license here. Cool. Personal identifying information. This is web text, so we're going to say that yes, it is very likely to have lots of personal information. And we're going to put everything at very likely. So in this case, I don't think that any of those is particularly more likely than any of the others. So in this case, I'm just going to remove everything, but we'll be caring mostly about the fact that we've indicated very likely for everything. So with that, I think it's be wary of everything. Okay, so again, media availability done, much faster. Please provide as much information. So that's where we differ from the primary source. We now have a process data sets. So we know that the data is coming from somewhere, and that's what we want to answer right now. It's what where might the data have come from? So here, the data, we're asking whether it's a process data set that has data that was created for the data sets, and then it will be original data, but that's not the case, or it's taken from a primary source. Are the primary sources to the data set available to investigate? Yes, they are fully available, means you can download them as is. Yes, the documentation homepage or description is available. So we're going to go with that because there's information about what they are in the paper, but we can't directly access them. Please select all primary sources for this data that are available in this catalog. So this does not actually correspond to a primary source that we have already indexed. If it had, then that would be great. We could just go with that. And this is going to be lots of web content, really. We're going to go with web other because it's going to be web everything. Actually, no, let me just go with all of the web in there. Hopefully, by the time you all use this catalog form, there will be a convenience button to not have to click through everything. Is the license or commercial status of the source material compatible with the license of the dataset? So that's something that we're going to look into for all of the process datasets, because sometimes people release datasets under a permissive license, even though the original text was extracted from commercial text that did not allow for such licenses. So here we're trying users to make a determination about what they think is likely at that level. So in this case, we're going to say that either we leave it unclear, or we're even more cautious, and we're going to say that this is a lot of crawl data from commercial websites, so they're probably not okay with continuing to disperse that. And the data governance group is going to have some determinations to make about how we handle this, but in any case, it's good to have the information. Okay, so this has mostly text. There's going to be lots of HTML. There's probably going to be some other formats. Wait, actually, there might be work in there, which is the usual format that. Oh, no, there isn't. Okay, so usually web crawls come in work formats. Work, there we go. Probably not transcribed text or very little, mostly web text. If the data is presented as a database or compressed archive, please select all formats that apply here. Can't really know without having downloaded it. So we're going to just skip that part. We're going to try and skip as little as we can, but in this case, we don't have access to that information. Okay, now about the size, it's telling us that there's 3.5 million documents for a total of 2.7 billion tokens. So there we go. One is we definitely need to add web page as a possible level of item. We said 3 million articles with about like 1,000 tokens on average. Cool. So we're saving now our second entry, primaries, which is a process dataset. There we go. And then we're going to go with the last kind of resource, which is the language organization. And for that, we're going to look at SADILAR, the South African Center for Digital Language Resources. So this one you will see is going to be much faster because we don't have all of that information about what the sources are quite. In this case, I'm going to actually change the name to just SADILAR. That's how everybody refers to it. Link to the web page, as usual. It takes a minute. Copy paste the description here. As far as the languages, so if you go through a catalog of resources, they let us filter it by languages. So we have Afrikaans, Dutch, English, Isindebele, I think, isiXhosa, isiZulu, Sepedi, Sesotho, and Sesotho. So there's definitely African languages that are particularly important for the BigScience project. So we're going to have the ones that are here. So isiXhosa, Xhosa, Zulu, Sesotho. We don't have Isindebele in there. Do we have Sepedi in this list here? No. No. Okay. So those are the BigScience languages. There are also other languages that are in the main list that we still want to add. So we said Afrikaans, Dutch, okay, I do not actually know whether it's South or North Mbele. I'm going to put both here, and this will be something definitely to check in when we're validating. And English, obviously, I nearly forgot English. Okay, so this is specifically a resource for South Africa. And again, hopefully someone goes and validates, because I'm sure that there is some language from neighboring countries, but we're going to stick with South Africa now because we're not doing all the investigation live. So the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, is it a university or an NGO? I think this one is National Research Center. The National Center, indeed. So for that, University of Research or Research Institution of FITS, as we mentioned, in South Africa. And as far as finding contact information, we're going to put the name of Janne van den Berg. who's the person behind their info address. And again, I'm going to put the website as where to find more information. Cool. And that's now 3 entries saved. It took us half an hour for 3 entries, so about 10 minutes for entries. But we did go over everything in detail. So hopefully, once you've done once or twice, it will go a lot faster. OK, so now let's look at what we added. We're collapsing everything because that is prettier. And when we're looking now at exploring, we have now a new entry in Brazil, a new entry in South Africa. If we want to look at, for example, only sources in Xhosa, then that's actually, let's see. OK, we are missing one entry in that specific visualization. Let's look at what we have in. Cool. We will double check the filtering before publishing again. But in real time, we do have, without the filtering, the update of the sources. OK, we're nearly done. The last thing that we're going to look at is how we can validate an entry. And that's by going to left and choosing validate an entry. So let's say I know that someone added Le Monde as a newspaper. And I want to make sure that they got everything right, or I want a second pair of eyes, and we will want a second pair of eyes of everything we use in the data sets in the data catalog to begin with at the end. So actually, this is telling me that someone has already validated that data set. So like, pay attention to that if you don't want to reproduce work. And you can look at the latest version if you want. In this case, I'm going to go back to the initial one just for demonstration purposes. I'm looking at what they have here. They have French for language. It's based in France, definitely. So I'm going to validate here. I'm OK with that. The representative custodian. And that's where things can become interesting, because the person who put the entry here wrote the full description. But I also know that someone else, Angie here, added an entry for Le Monde group, which is the entity that owns the dataset, and we want to make sure that those are linked. So I'm going to change that. And now there will be an updated version that, instead of having duplicated information, links directly to what we have. Cool. And I mean, I'm the one who added this entry, so I know that I'm going to validate all of this, but it's still good to have a second look. Source category, this is a collection of news articles. Media type, this is text in plain text, HTML, and PDF formats. There's no transcribed text. There's probably between 10,000 or 100,000 articles that probably have all about 1,000 words, right? And when everything is validated, I can save my updates, and now there will be 3 versions in there. It's important to know that it's going to prevent you from saving if you forgot to validate one of the sections. And now, if I go to select Le Monde again, it will tell me that it's already validated, and there's 3 versions there. The latest one is the one that I added. OK, so this is an extensive walkthrough through all of the capacities of the catalog. Hopefully that helps people get started. If you rather watch the video than look at the guide, there's still the guide for supports. Cool. Do we have any questions?
Is posting information in other languages allowed?
Yeah, that is a good one, and most definitely. So let me collapse everything and go back to entry. So here for Cedilar, we added references to languages that are not in the BigScience list. In general, if you don't see your languages, as we mentioned previously, you can click that show other languages here and select from an extended list.
Oh, I was thinking in like the text descriptions. So providing a description of the resource that's not in English.
Yes, definitely. Especially if you're copy pasting from there about us for sources in other languages, those are, I guess, not going to be in English.